Call the meeting to order, and our first order of business is our president is in attendance remotely, and by statute, he's required to run the meeting. However, we're concerned that should he lose his connection or something, that we'd lose continuity in the meeting, so he's asked me to sit in for him. However, that would require a motion from the Planning Commission. So
It's an actual rule of procedure.
really,
So a rule of procedure to allow the vice president to preside over the meeting, even though the president is attending electronically.
so move.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand, please. See Trent's hand is up.
Mr. Polar,
All opposed, same sign. Okay, passes 9-0. So I will indeed call the meeting to order. It's now 7:01, and the first item, the second item on the agenda is approval of minutes from November 8th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Dine, second by Monica.
and I would remind you, under your rules of procedure, when you have a member participating electronically, you will do your votes by roll call. So we need to make sure we call the roll so we can get an audible, and all those who might be participating electronically and everyone here knows what the votes are.
Do we need to do roll call for those that are present?
Correct. It says all votes shall be by roll call when you have a member participating electronically.
Okay. So the approval of that last motion, we need to do by roll, correct?
I would, to make sure it's clear.
So I make the motion. That's
There was a motion by Mr.
Mr. Walker,
second by Ms.
second by-
Magna for the amendment to the rules of procedure to allow the vice president to preside.
Mr. Dine.
Aye.
Mr. Walker.
yes.
Mr. Schrader.
Yes.
Ms. Gardner.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Aye.
Monica.
Aye.
Mr. What's your name? You remember? Mr. Pioni. Aye. And Mr. Polar.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. So 9-0. Passes.
And now you're to your minutes. There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Dine and a second by Ms. Magna to adopt those minutes.
Mr. Dine.
Aye.
Mr. Walker. Aye. Mr. Schroeder.
Aye.
Ms. Gardner.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Aye.
Monica.
Aye.
Mr. Peony.
I'm gonna abstain. I was there.
Understood. Mr. Polar.
Aye.
I am aye as well, so the vote is 8-0 with one abstention. It passes. Are there any special requests or continuances? Seeing none, is there any old business? Don't believe so. Is there any old business from the floor? Not seeing any. Move into new business. First item is PC 2020-061, the Elmwood Landscape Waiver. This is not a public hearing. So are you presenting? Or,
Yeah.
okay. Could you please state your name, and address, and then be sworn in?
Okay, it's Kevin Sumner with Y Engineers, 10505 North College Avenue, Indianapolis, Indiana.
Oh, you sure don't penalties to perjury, testimony like it's true to the best of your knowledge.
Okay, Mr. Sumner, go ahead and proceed.
This is Elmwood Estates, the overall development. This is south of Emerson Avenue and Cushville Road. So what we're here tonight for is we've got a requirement for 40-foot street tree spacing required throughout the development. As we've gone through and done the landscaping on the entire development, we found that with the driveways, and utility spacing, it makes it very difficult to get all those trees in there. So what we're proposing today is, or what we're requesting is to ability to move around 10% of the street trees that are required to common areas around the development. And then with that request, I guess then it would need to be the planning department or the staff would approve the moving of those trees.
There's roughly 600 trees in the plan, so I'd be relocating 60 of them.
Yeah,
Approximately.
And from staff standpoint, we're agreeable to this. We just want to make sure that when each section is getting close to built out, that we get a final landscape plan to show which trees are relocated, so we can have an accounting of that.
And also, did the staff report show that some of the trees would interfere with utilities also? That's not, that they have trees over utilities, correct?
Correct. And sometimes the utilities are put in and then the house plan is changed, the driveway moves to the other side. Now the water line's in the way. There's a more than a handful of reasons they might end up with conflicts. So the 10% will give them some flexibility without removal of a significant number of trees. And these trees would be relocated to common areas. I don't think that part's been stated, so they will still be within the project. They'll still be part of it. They're just going to be in common areas.
Since this is not a public hearing, there won't be any demonstrators. Motion's been prepared.
I move that the request of Lennar Homes of Indiana Incorporated for waiver of the requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance, Greenwood Municipal Code, Chapter 10, Article 25, Division 3, Generally Applicable Regulations, Section 10-03-06, Landscaping and Buffering. H, streetscaping that specifies planting 1 tree per 40 lineal feet of frontage to permit planting 10% of the required street trees in common areas around the project to avoid placement conflicts with driveway and utility locations be approved, and that the Plan Commission find that Lennar Homes of Indiana Incorporated has met the criteria set forth by Greenwood Municipal Code Section 10-04-05I for the waiver, for the reasons set forth in its request for the waiver and as presented.
Motion's been presented. Is there a second? Second. Trader? Are there any questions among the commission or comments? Hearing none. Mr. Dine? Aye. Mr. Walker? Aye. Mr. Schrader? Aye. Ms. Gardner?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Monica?
Aye.
Mr. Peony?
Aye.
Mr. Polar?
Aye.
I too am I. So, motion carries 9-0. Good luck.
Appreciate it.
The next item on the docket is PC 2021-015, Voluntary Annexation. This is a public hearing, which means we'll have 15 minutes of presentation, and then there'll be 15 minutes reserved for remonstrators. And that'll be followed up by 5 minutes rebuttal by both the presenter and the group of remonstrators. Yeah, if there's anybody who wants to speak, please stand and be sworn in.
You swear on perjury. The testimony we have to take is true to the best of your knowledge.
I do.
Please state your name and address.
For the record, my name is Tim Oaks. I'm an attorney at Ice Miller with offices at 1 American Square, Suite 2900, Indianapolis, Indiana 46332. Here on behalf of Pulte Homes of Indiana. I think it's important to know that what we're here tonight for is the first step of what has to be several steps. And the first step, relatively speaking, is incredibly innocuous, which is to say, this is a voluntary annexation. It actually started with substantially more real estate, over 300 acres. One of the owners of property that originally signed a consent to annex has withdrawn. Because of the process involved, which would have been a conversion from a 100% voluntary annexation to a less than 100%, it's a different statutory provision. We agreed to make an adjustment. So we're now down to about 104 acres, just a couple of property owners. This has to be, though, a first step for two reasons. One, there is a contiguity requirement when you annex property, even when it's 100% voluntary annexation. That contiguity requires that 1/8 of the property being annexed is contiguous to the existing municipal boundaries. So when we lost Mr. Miller's property, we had to adjust those boundaries because we had to stay within that contiguity requirement. What that means is we have a smaller area, and then we're going to have to do this in 2 bites instead of 1. There's also a second issue here, which is by Indiana statute dealing with the fire protection districts, which this property is in. When you annex property that's in a fire protection district that, thank you for that, is in a certain of a certain size and a certain age, which this property qualifies for, regardless of when the annexation ordinance is approved by the Greenwood City Council here, the current law states that the annexation and then therefore the zoning that comes with it cannot be effective until the second January 1st after the adoption of the ordinance, which means that if the council is able to adopt the ordinance yet this calendar year 2021, the annexation can't even become effective until January 1st of 2023. So we have to deal with that issue. We have to deal with the issue of doing this in steps. This is the first step, and it's now shown on the map here. The second step will be to annex the remaining portion of the Francis Ann property, which is the balance of the parcel that is in black that the green is part of, along with some additional real estate located to the east and to the north. So we've got to tack that on as well. The plan for Pulte, to be clear, is to ultimately develop what a Del Webb community, which is a senior housing community. People call it age restricted or over 55. That is ultimately the plan. But because we have to take this in 2 chunks, it made sense to us to do that with one rezoning all at once. So that is in the future. So the first step is this step because of the annexation requirement. Because of the 2 additional steps that follow and the potential time that it will take to get done, we thought it best to bring this in as ag. That's what it is currently used for. That is the most restrictive, or about the most restrictive zoning classification in the Greenwood ordinance, which means we still have to come back before the planning commission. We still have to go to the council when we're ready to show the complete development of not just the property that's part of this annexation, but of also the second one. But because of the way the law works, we have to do this in steps. We frankly prefer not to, but we have no choice. So we're stuck with it. So if for some and this is the safest way to do it. And what I mean by that is from the perspective of Greenwood, if something happens where this project doesn't move forward, what does Greenwood have? They have 100 acres that are now within the town, within the city limits, with no one living there. There's no residences on this property that's being annexed, and it's zoned ag, and no one's going to be able to use it for anything that's not permitted in the ag district without coming back to you. So it's an extremely safe process to take, with the really interesting part coming in steps 2 and 3. And unfortunately, that's going to take some time. So I wanted to make sure everybody understood that. I'd like to publicly thank staff for their assistance in this matter. And their report, I think, covers it pretty well, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that the planning commission might have.
We'll take those in later. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in favor of this annexation? If not, we'll move on to remonstrators. Anybody who'd like to speak against the annexation? Yes, sir, come right up. Please state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is John Cross. I'm an attorney. My address is 13 North State Street, Suite 241 in Greenfield, Indiana. I am here tonight representing Dr. Robert Robinson. His address is 904 North Matthew Road in Greenwood, and he is present as well tonight. And to be clear for his position, he is a property owner, was that address, which is directly east, one of the parcels directly east of the entirety of the proposed annexation parcel. His concern relates to part of his use of this property. He both lives there and also has a private airstrip along the half-mile portion of his parcel, where he uses it to fly his private plane in and out. So he takes off and lands at the property, flies it maybe 2 or 3 times per month for purely private and charitable purposes, where he assists nonprofits and other associations, organizations, and groups with helping them by letting them sell tickets for him to take up those who buy the tickets up in the airport. So his concern here clearly is the unknowns of any future development to the west of his property. Again, he prefers to take off and land from the west side of his parcel, which is likely where any of the proposed developments could possibly go. At this stage, we do recognize that it is extremely early in the process, that it is going to take some time. But at this stage, we just got involved as well. So I didn't know until tonight that the proposed development was going to be for senior housing as opposed to just purely residential, single-family residences. So that definitely raises a greater concern from Dr. Robinson's perspective of what does a senior housing development look like? What will be the heights of the buildings proposed? How close will they be to the property line, specifically his property line? And how that will affect his use of the property. He certainly doesn't want to have any diminished use of it. So he right now is questioning whether such a development is the best use adjacent to a property that has a private airstrip on it that is used for a private plane taking off and landing, which future owners or habitants of the senior housing facility or whoever is going to live there may have an issue with. So his main concern is just to avoid any issues with any future owners of the developed property. And he does not oppose the annexation as a whole. He does not oppose the rezoning as a whole for the purposes stated tonight by Mr. Oakes. But he is concerned that it will have a diminished use of his property if there is any sort of issues that the new neighbors in the future would bring to his attention. He doesn't want to be exposed to potential lawsuits by neighbors claiming that him flying his aircraft would constitute a nuisance. And he wants to make sure that there are still safety issues known to him and the future developers with respect to his use of the property and what it looks like for him landing and taking off both from the west and the east of his property. So he's really just concerned how the plans to develop the property will affect him without knowing exactly what those plans are going to be, what the developments will look like. So there are a lot of questions that we would have at this time. And I did speak with Mr. Oak previously today, and I understand that there's a lot of time for going forward for anything to come about from this, but we still just do have questions that we'd like some answers. We just want to make sure that his concerns are addressed. We did discuss proposed solutions, or at least I proposed a couple with respect to Dr. Robinson being granted some sort of easement for the airspace rights, or incorporating some sort of covenant in the development plans whereby his rights would be made known to any future owners of that property, thereby they'd be taking any sort of ownership interest with knowledge of his right to use the property. That way we'd be avoiding any sort of conflict that could arise from any of the future owners, which I don't think is only in his interest as a property owner, but also be in the interest of Greenwood as well, to not invite potential litigation that could result from development nearby a private airstrip on Dr. Robinson's property. And with that said, I believe Dr. Robinson would like to speak as well.
It's just a brief note here that I pinned for the council tonight. I've lived on the 40 acres there for 40 some years of practice medicine south side of Marion County and Johnson County for a long time. I'm submitting my request that this private airfield that my privileges remain in effect. And in regard to the land along 5.6 Road. My private airfield has been in existence for approximately 43 years. It is listed by the FAA as Robinson Field. You can Google that. Indeed, my airstrip is visible on the survey map that you sent out in your letter there. And it's been listed on the FAA navigation charts in the past. And I also have a legal description from the FAA. Just a little bit about myself. I've been a private pilot for 50 years. I fly for charity organizations such as Johnson County Leadership Council, the Real Mission, food pantries, so forth. I have a perfectly clean accident record. I currently own a World War II Stearman stationed at my house there. My dad was a World War II flight instructor. My brother's a professional pilot. And I fly only 3 or 4 times a month. It's not like a steady stream of traffic by any means. And I do prefer to take off and land. The landscape is better towards the west. I can do downwind and upwind landings both that direction, and it's been a real safety safety emphasis for all these years. So I like to be able to maintain that privilege.
And so just to reiterate, we're not opposing the entire annexation rezone at this time. Any questions, we have to answer them, but we just want to input and make the commission aware of the use of the airstrip and to take into proper consideration what effect that could have next to this development. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that'd like to speak as a remonstrator? Rebuttal, Mr. Sumner or anybody else? No, Mr. Sumner. Oh, Mr. Oaks, I'm sorry, wrong. Thank you.
Just, I'll be very brief. I did speak to John earlier today, as he had mentioned. 2 things. One, most importantly, nothing that's being proposed tonight, the annexation and the zoning with the ag district, will have any impact whatsoever on his ability to continue to operate his airstrip. That's the most important thing. I could probably stop there because it would be fair. But having said that, as I discussed with him earlier today, when was the first time we heard about it. Because of this process, we have time. And as I told him, we look forward to discussing the project in more detail with him as we get further down the road. There, when the rezoning to allow the project itself is before you, that is really the appropriate time to consider this. And it's certainly my hope that if at all possible, by the time that rolls around, we have an understanding with Dr. Robinson in terms of how we can coexist on that property. That is the objective. But given what's before you tonight, that will have zero impact on his continued use of the property. So that's all I have for rebuttal. Again, be happy to answer any questions.
Demonstrators, is there any rebuttal? Seeing none, close public hearing. Questions or discussion among the commission?
I agree that it's probably a year and a half to 2 years before any ground is broken for the construction of any housing or whatever. But as long as the two attorneys would agree, especially the developer's attorney, to work together to keep each other informed and maybe get some agreement worked out, that will make the process go forward. But I agree that this annexation has nothing to do with what's going on that property. So to let the public know that we're miles away from, having a vote on what really happens out there. All this does is bring it into the city. And we're not,
As agriculture.
as agriculture, we're not giving away anything or any property rights or anything. I would hate to go that way, that we would give up your rights for what you've worked for so hard. And then secondly, if it's a good project and they're willing to work with the community, then vote in favor of that, if that's what it comes to, if that's acceptable. But right now, to the remonstrators, this won't have any effect on what's going on for you right now.
Is there any complications with the county, since the doctor's property is governed by the county and not by the city of Greenwood?
I'm not sure to understand your question, Mr. Kohler. What was that?
Well, and the attorneys will all work that out, but the county would have to be made aware, I think, of the agreements that would come forth, because his property's in the county, while the property that's being developed is going to be in Greenwood. And I just wondered if there was going to be any problem or conflict between the two, since there would be different jurisdictions, if you will. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but
I would think that whatever property agreements they come to, easements or whatever, would be under our jurisdiction of the development. So that would be what Greenwood is concerned about. I don't know that the county would have a say in what is going on. Yeah, the city, we would not be doing anything that would affect property that's outside the city's jurisdiction.
okay.
You stole my thunder.
Anybody else? Well, there are statutory criteria.
Yes, indeed there are. In making a recommendation on this annexation petition, as it does involve a rezoning, you'll have to have a zoning classification. You are to pay regard to the following items in making that recommendation. 1, the comprehensive plan. 2, the current conditions and the character of current structures and uses in each district. 3, the most desirable use for which the land in each district is adapted. 4, the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction of Greenwood. And 5, responsible development and growth.
Having been reminded of the statutory criteria, a motion has been prepared.
Mr. President, I move that the amended petition for annexation of approximately 104.3 acres generally located north of Main Street along 5 Points Road, which is contiguous to the city of Greenwood, Johnson County, Indiana, as set forth therein, receive a favorable recommendation from this commission to the Greenwood Common Council, and that the same be certified to the Greenwood Common Council in the form presented.
There are no
Okay,
commitments.
I was gonna say
written
there are
in
no commitments. And do we need to, in the motion, Shauna, add anything about the rezone as well, or is that automatic?
It is in the form presented, includes the zoning classification.
So that's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any other comments for the committee? If not, we'll do roll call. Mr. Dine.
Aye.
Mr. Walker. Aye. Mr. Schrader.
Aye.
Ms. Gardner.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Aye.
Monica.
Aye.
Mr. Pioni.
Aye.
Mr. Polar.
Aye.
And I too am aye. So the motion carries, vote of 9-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Mr. The next item is also a public hearing. It's PC 2021-106, Using Management Rezone. We're gonna wait just a few moments, allow people to clear out so everybody can hear.
On the side of the screen towards the mic.
Oh, did you get it?
Reach a little bit further back.
Okay, we'll go ahead and proceed. I'd like to remind everybody, this is a public hearing. There'll be 15 minutes for presentation on this, 15 minutes reserved for demonstrators, following which there'll be 2 5-minute periods for rebuttals. Anybody who would like to speak, please stand and be sworn in.
Do you swear no penalties of perjury, the testimony about things true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Who is presenting?
Good afternoon, I'm Tom Vanderlick here with Van Baylor Law Firm, here on behalf of the petitioner, Using Management Company, and the contract buyer, of the parcel in question. Hold on my arm. I think I forgot to give my address, 225 South Emerson Street, 181, Greenwood, Indiana, 46143. Thank you. So the parcel in question is 374 Emerson Avenue in Greenwood, north of County Line, south of County Line, a little closer to Main Street, just north of Main Street. There, I've got the aerial picture. It's on the west side of the Emerson Avenue, adjacent to the airport, south of some industrial zone parcels and north of some residential zone parcels. The conceptual plan here shows the project as it's currently laid out right now. Of course, this is conceptual. Just meeting with the Greenwood officials and the planning department, we're now on revisions 3. So as you know, the conceptual plans can change. But this is generally speaking what we intend to move forward with. We've got 4 apartment buildings, a clubhouse, an office, and it's 4 stories. next to the airport. Just to let you know, not saying that people can't show up tonight and express any statements that they may have, but as is customary for our office, we extended an invitation to meet with folks at the library so we can get some input on the project, and anticipating that someone might have some concerns, try to work them out. We did not receive much of a response to it. One person showed up and they're going to speak tonight, so I won't speak for him, let him share his concerns tonight. It's Mr. Dwight Howard, as I understand it. Statutory criteria, as you know, we are asking for this parcel, which is industrial, to be rezoned residential more or less, and I'll get into the specific zoning classifications here in a moment. We intend to construct an upscale apartment community consisting of 4 apartment buildings, 4 stories in height, plus amenities such as private garages, a clubhouse, swimming pool, fitness center, bicycle maintenance station, dog park with a dog wash station. As you know, the statutory criteria that must be considered in connection with a rezoning petition. The first, this request complies with the comprehensive plan in the following ways. Well, if we look at page 64 of the comprehensive plan, it describes the Emerson corridor between County Line Road and Main Street as part of the life sciences employment area. The comprehensive plan goes on to state that commercial uses in this corridor should cater to the day-to-day needs of the life sciences employment area, rather than compete with the regional shopping center, aka Greenwood Park Mall, or the State Road 135 Marketplace corridor. The comprehensive plan further provides that the airport constitutes the most established use in this corridor. Therefore, as provided by the plan, future development within this area should consist of less intensive uses and low-rise buildings. That statement comports with our proposed use. We have a less intensive use than is currently zoned, and we have low-rise buildings. So we're moving on to the second statutory criteria. The request complies with current conditions and the character of current structures and uses in each district in the following ways. Most of the properties on the west side of Emerson and south of the site are designated residential medium. The overwhelming majority of those properties are surrounded by some other use besides industrial. So changing this site to a residential use, specifically RMC residential medium, will better align it with current conditions and structures. So this is currently zoned industrial. I get to that again, IL. So moving on to the next criteria, the request is most desirable use for the land in which the district is adaptive, because the construction of an apartment community in accordance with the RMC district is the most desirable use of this land. It will provide an excellent transition from the residential use to the south that exists there now, and the industrial use to the north of this parcel. So what we're going to be is we're going to be stacking a residential single-family residences with multifamily to industrial, as opposed to what we currently have now, which is single-family right next to potentially industrial uses, which could be somebody can come in there without any permission and start an industrial operation. I'll go into what kind of those operations they will consist of. The next request, or the next statutory criteria that you must consider in a rezoning request, will not negatively affect the property values throughout Greenwood, because the use of the property as an apartment complex, apartment community, will preserve the property values throughout Greenwood, and in particular, the residential properties to the south of the site. Allowing the property to remain industrial large zoning might even harm the residential properties to the south. The IL zone provides for areas of the city devoted to large-scale industrial, manufacturing, warehouse, and distribution activities of a regional scale, generally oriented around I-65. It includes boarding kennels, automotive repair, event centers, beverage distribution, heavy equipment repair, heavy manufacturing, contractor storage, commercial storage, outdoor processing of concrete, asphalt, and a detention correction center. Like if I'm living to the south in a residence, I probably want a multifamily operation. To the north of me, not one of those industrial uses. The request is considered responsible development and growth because developing the property as residential rather than industrial constitutes responsible growth because residential calls for multi-unit buildings, attached single-family dwellings, duplexes, or residential uses. Again, the current zoning of industrial allows for large-scale industrial manufacturing warehousing, as I've already described, that are more consistent with what happens on the east side of 65. Those uses would negatively impact the use and enjoyment of the residential properties to the south. And like I said, somebody could just step in and start using those, using the property for any of those uses. Whereas if we get it to RMC, we've got a multifamily use, which is more consistent with the properties to the south and better aligns the zoning as we start moving north of Emerson Avenue on the west side of the avenue. And again, that's just the zoning ordinance. You know, that's why we have these petitions for rezoning. That's why we have variances from dimensional criteria. That's why we have variances. Because our zoning area, it's a guide. It's really hard to pinpoint places. And I would submit to you that this is a spot that's really needs to be residential, not industrial. And this is the process by which we come to you, point this out, and we've got a company that's interested in developing the property, multifamily, and we ought to take that opportunity to get the property better aligned with what fits in the area there. Thank you for your attention. Now, save it for questions in the 5-minute rebuttal, or now if you like.
Later.
Okay.
Is there anybody else wanting to speak in favor of this? Not, anybody speak in rebuttal? Please state your name and address, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Dwight Howard. I live at 318 North Emerson Avenue, and I am a third-generation owner on Emerson Avenue. And I've spent 65 years on this earth on Emerson Avenue. I'm here because I am having a hard time accepting what they want to do to the 16 acres. They're going to build 4 stories, 4 apartment buildings on that land. But he didn't mention the fact that it's going to be 320 units. Okay, and on the paperwork they have, it figures out to be a density of 20 units per acre. Okay, they're claiming that by building this on that property, it's going to put it in line with the rest of the residential area on South Emerson Avenue. Okay, so I did a little study. Behind my house, which was owned by my grandfather, it's approximately 16 acres. It consists of doubles. There are 49 structures in that 16 acres. Okay, so now to put it in line, there's 49 doubles, so you really have to double it so that you're talking about 98 families. Okay, then if you go further south, you'll come to the Spring Meadows Edition. And that is approximately 50 acres. It was Walter Beckner's farmland. And on that 50 acres is 110 homes. Okay, so if you add the 98 units or families behind my property and the 110, that gives you a total of 208 units on 66 acres, which is a density of 3.15 per acre. So we're talking about a density of 20 units per acre coming in line with the rest of the housing. There's no truth to that. Okay. Now, one other concern that we have And I'm very grateful that we've got some members that live in the addition behind us here tonight, and I hope they will get up and voice their opinions. But the main concern we're concerned with is the traffic. Okay, you've already committed to 180 vehicles when you built the Berg apartments, okay? Up on Greenwood Springs Drive, all right? Now you're wanting, if this is approved, you're committing to 320, and I'm using the bare minimum numbers. Because what if some people have 2 vehicles? Okay, so we could go up from 180 with the Berg to 360, and you could go from 320 to 640. Emerson Avenue is not designed to handle the commitment of that many vehicles every day. By approving this property to have 320 units, you're committing 320 vehicles at a minimum. Because they live on Emerson, they're gonna go out and they're gonna come back. Okay, so with the 2 combined, just using the bare minimum numbers, you use 320 and 160. Okay, you're looking at 500 vehicles committed every day to Emerson Avenue. Now, I know some of you may not go down Emerson Avenue, but it is crazy out there. And what I'm asking is, I don't want to see Emerson Avenue turn into a Smith Valley Road or a Main Street or a County Line Road. Today, when I came home from work, northbound Emerson Avenue was backed up to County Line Road all the way back to the Goodwill. This is a natural occurrence. But we have to live there and we have to get in and out of our property. And one thing, I've already taken one punch in the gut already from the city of Greenwood. When they put the concrete divider down the road 2 summers ago, they took away my right to turn north out of my property, and I cannot turn into my property when I'm going northbound. So, we've accepted that and we've gone on. But now you're wanting to build 4-story buildings next door. And there's no way that I'm convinced that fits into the structural development on Emerson. Because you cannot drive from County Line Road to Main Street and see a 4-story building. Non-existent. Now, the Berg is a 4-story, but it's back away from Emerson Avenue. Now, I believe, I would like to thank the city of Greenwood because I think you've done a great job in developing Emerson Avenue. But we don't need 320 units next to all the residents. I mean, the traffic is bad enough the way it is, but it is only going to get worse. And there's safety involved. There's a lot of lives involved. And I hope that you will consider just leaving the zoning alone. Okay, for example, I want to go through the misinformation. They said that changing the site to a residential, specifically RMC, would better align it with current conditions and structures. Wrong. I've already shown how that is not true. The construction of an apartment community in accordance with the RMDC district is the most desirable use of this land. I disagree. When you build 4-story apartment buildings, that is not using the land. If we're interested in putting housing in, then why not continue with the condominiums or the doubles that are behind my house? We could put them over there. That would alleviate the 320 vehicles that are being proposed by this building. And then it says use of the property as an apartment community will preserve the property values throughout Greenwood. The residential properties to the south of this site. I disagree with that. The value of our property is immediately going down with the construction of 4-story buildings that are going to house apartments. 20 apartments. And I would hope that you would consider that. I know you, a lot of you don't live out there. But it's my life. And like I said, I'm a third generation owner, and I don't want to move until the day I die. I mean, I am really old fashioned, and it's my heritage. I grew up out there, I farmed all that land out there, but I just have a hard time seeing the Ryder property being used in such a manner, because it's going to have such an astronomical effect on everybody out there. There's too much traffic that is going to be committed every day to Emerson Avenue. So I would hope that you would please consider denying the change to RMC and just leave it as I am. Now, statements have been made that, well, you know, anybody can come in there. Well, I'm willing to roll the dice, because I guarantee you that any light industry that comes in there will not employ 320 employees. That's the problem, the number 320, guaranteeing those vehicles on the road every day. So I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Sir,
I just stand right here.
have you been sworn in?
No. No, I didn't.
You'll need to be sworn in.
Do you swear no penalties for perjury? Yes, if we got to give the truth, the best of your knowledge.
Yes,
We can back it.
I have to agree with him.
Can you
Traffic,
state your name and address?
oh, Lester Lucas, 968 Maple Grove Drive. Greenwood, 46203. Okay,
Yep.
all right, my kitchen door in the condo faces that field. And when I built my shed in the backyard, the zoning man, when I went to get my permit, told me where I had to build it, and that's where I built it, because of the airplane. Well, if that happens, I hope it hits the garage instead of my house. But anyway, that being said, our first paper that I received at home said it was for a 2-story apartment. That was on Mr. Van, whatever his name was, Van Buren, notice. And I did come here to the library, but I didn't see, well, I had to go over all the way on 135 instead of right here at Greenwood Library. And the traffic. God only knows what's gonna happen up there at Walmart from county line this way. It's just gonna be horrible, I think.
Yes, sir.
Swear no penalties for perjury and testimony that is true to the best of your knowledge.
My name is Tim Fox, over 974 Maple Grove. In my house, like his back, so it's.
Can you come up to the microphone?
My concern for the project again is twofold. One is the traffic as the area has grown. When we moved there 20-some years ago, I didn't have any trouble getting in and out. Wasn't a problem, no matter what time of day, rush hour or not. As each new project is going in, most of the time, if I want to go south, I have to turn north and turn back around and come back. It's just, that's a third of the time I can't just turn out of my driveway and go normal anymore. And a lot of times it's frustrating, and to be quite honest, I get fairly angry having to sit and wait just to pull out onto the highway. Especially during rush hours of the weekends, it's just crazy. The next thing is 4-story buildings behind our house doesn't fit the neighborhood. These are single-family homes, duplexes, where you can look in your neighbor's backyard and you're not overpowered by large buildings. Even when they put in anti-lilas, it didn't affect our neighborhood and our vision for what we could see. We didn't feel like it affected our property values. I can understand adding, as they said, single-family homes or condos or double units. That wouldn't be so intrusive, but a 4-story building behind my house, that pretty well does away with any privacy we have. I mean, curtains closed, windows not open, not to mention, you know, the noise of all the extra people you're putting there. You know, if we want to sit outside and you have all these people, it changes everything. You know, it changes our enjoyment of sitting out in our backyard. It changes the enjoyment of just having quiet. I mean, that's a lot of people in a small area. And I don't want to look at a 4-story building. I don't mind a house. I mean, that fits where we're at. And like you said, there aren't 4-story buildings from Main Street all the way down pretty much to county line, other than you go over on the Walmart side, and you can't really see those. You know, I would like to see this area kept for homes that truly fit the area. Single story, no more than 2-story, that everyone can live with and enjoy. But this project is, it doesn't fit the area, and it doesn't fit the aesthetics for what we're used to and what we enjoy. And I really don't want to move, but I don't think I can live with 4-story houses right up my back door.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? We've got about a minute.
Okay.
And you have to be sworn in.
I'm not sworn in, but I agree with Tim. He's my neighbor.
Yeah.
There's my neighbor.
Yes.
Oh,
You have to be sworn in, please.
Do you swear to finish the perjury, testify to the truth, that's your knowledge?
absolutely. I agree with Tim.
Can you give your name and address, please?
That our houses, if these apartments are
Ma'am,
built back there,
Can you give your name and
my
address?
name is Carla Sherfick. I've lived at 978 Maple Grove Drive for 30 years. It's a half a double. They're all half doubles, and most of us are close to retirement or we are retired. And if this apartment building goes up, those people are gonna live there and they're gonna be able to walk. If that's a parking lot, they're gonna be able to walk right over the easement and right into our backyards. And what about the airport with the 4-story building? The airport's right there. And most of the people, like I say, and where I live, we're retired. And it's a beautiful neighborhood. They're half doubles. They're all single stories, except a few are upstairs. But it's a quiet neighborhood. And ever since they did that to Emerson by putting that island down the middle of it with the greenery and everything, we've had traffic problems getting out of our development. Sometimes, like Tim said, we have to turn right and go down and turn around and then come back to go north on Emerson. And I just can't imagine spending the rest of my life. I'm 80 years old, my husband's 81. I cannot imagine spending the rest of my life and having an apartment building up there right in my backyard. And our backyards are not very big anyway. They're half doubles, they're small. And I just can't imagine what it's gonna be like for that. That is too much traffic. Emerson is absolutely crazy right now. And it's gotten worse since they put that island in there with the greenery. Because you can't go from one, our street all the way over. And you can't go out in the middle and stop and wait for traffic. You have to do that. You cannot go out there and sit because there's nowhere to sit to go on to the maybe north or go out and to go south. So,
Thank you, ma'am. We have gone over on time. but
thank you.
Ma'am, you were trying to get up, I understood, so if you'll be sworn in, we'll take, if you can be brief, please.
Yes.
Do you swear to cease from perjury, testify to the truth, that's your knowledge?
Anna Olave, 994 Silver Maple Court in Greenwood, 317-457-1733. I just want to say I wholeheartedly agree with everyone who has spoken here. I don't live at that end, but it's just a nice little peaceful part of Greenwood that I thoroughly enjoy. I've lived there since 2003. And I would hate to see that change. It's just been really a pleasure to live there the way it is right now. Thank you.
Thank you. The presenter could have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Mr. Howard, Mr. Lucas, Mr. Fox, Ms. Shiffrey, and Ms. Analog. Don't know that I said all that correctly. So apologize, but thank you for coming to the meeting and expressing your concerns and sharing. It's not always easy to come up and speak at a public meeting. Mr. Fox, I looked at my letter. My letter doesn't reference any 2-story or 4-story building. It just says that there's a petition and you can come to the offices here and review it. As far as meeting at the White River Library, the Greenwood Library wasn't available. That was the only public room we could get over there on State Road 135. I thank you for coming over there. We stayed till well after 8 with Mr. Howard and had a very good conversation with him. I'm sorry we missed you. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people got upset in Greenwood when we started putting in the middle of the road there, and you can't go out one way or another anymore. But that really doesn't have anything to do with our project. And as far as traffic goes, we're spending $16,000 on a traffic study to figure out what's going to happen. And as I understand it, there may be a need for an accel or decel lane. I mean, that's how you handle the traffic. That doesn't stop development. As far as the maximum density, this isn't something, it's in our presentation materials. And I don't know where Mr. Howard got the number. He might have gotten it from the information we shared at the library. I don't know, but we're not hiding the ball. That's in our materials. It's at the materials that were available for folks who showed up. It's 20 units per acre is what we're looking at right now. The density, as I understand it, is 30. We're looking at 20. To try to be as low impact as possible on what is already transitioning from single family to multifamily and duplexes to the apartments is we're set back. Our building is set back 93 feet from the property line on the south side. So we don't have to set it back. We did because we're trying to be good neighbors, more or less. And that's in our site. It's in our current conceptual plan. If you look at, also if you look at the west side, the further west side there, you can see the setback lines for different levels of buildings. And we're well beyond the 4 building setback line for the airport, as I understand it. You can see it right there. So there is that, you can see the airport setback. So it was brought up. Maybe they don't care about the airport setback, but they brought it up and we're just showing that, yes, you can have a 4-story building there. There's the setback you got to deal with. As far as looking at buildings, that's having neighbors. That's what landscaping requirements are for. And that's not really a reason to vote when it comes to recommending approval or disapproval to the Common Council, which is what you're doing tonight. This isn't Greenwood. We all know that, but I just say that so that the folks in the audience know that Greenwood's not doing this. This is a private developer who's got a contract to buy this 16 acres. There's a need for this type of housing. And Greenwood, the apartments that exist today are 98 to 99% full. Those are the occupancy rates. There's a need, and that's what developers and business owners, they come to Greenwood because there's a need. And this 16 acres can fill a need, and I think it can actually also stack properly when you consider the zoning. Because while they might say that they don't want an asphalt company next door today, they really will object to it when it comes time to put it in. And right now we can save them that trouble and we can move forward with a residential zoning classification, which is much more appropriate for this 16 acres. Thank you for your time again.
Thank you. Is there, we'll move over to 5 minutes for the rebuttal for the demonstrators. Yes, sir. Mr. Howard.
Yeah, my name is Dwight Howard. I live at 318 North Emerson Avenue. Since you brought up the issue of apartments, I did a little study on this. Right now in the city of Greenwood, there are 28 apartment complexes, okay, for a total of 5,830 units. Okay, now, you can also include 2 other facilities, and unfortunately, they exist on the east side of town. You got the Wood Springs Suites, which is back there on Greenwood Spring Road. And you got the In-Town Suites, which is on Main Street, just west of Emerson Avenue. Okay, these are facilities where you can rent for a day or a week or a month at a time. So therefore, if you want to include those in the opportunity for apartments, that's a total of 235 additional units. Okay, now in the pipeline, we've also got a proposal of, I think, 500 down where the middle school has been torn down. That's the last number that I could get was 500. All right, and now you're proposing 332 units in the property adjacent to my property. Okay, you know, apartments, yes, are needed, but they have their place. 4-story buildings do not belong on the DeRuyter property. They do not belong there because he never mentioned 320. Okay, that's a key number because you're committing 320 vehicles every day going up and down Emerson Avenue. And you add on the ones from the Verb, which are already built. That is over 500 vehicles that are committed every day because the people live on Emerson Avenue. And their only way that they can go in or out is with the use of Emerson Avenue. And that is a major concern. And I hope you will please consider that. And also, I wanted to talk a little bit about the meeting, the public information meeting. Okay, I received my paperwork on 11/4, Thursday, November 4th. The meeting was the next Monday. Okay, rather quick, I think, but I went because I'm concerned. Like I said, this is my heritage. I've grown up and spent 40 years of my life on this road. I care about it. I care about the city of Greenwood. But this was awful quick, and I would like to know what is the movement on this? Why are we moving so fast? I mean, 2 weeks from that, now we're here with the planning commission trying to rezone the land. Okay, and then what are we going to do? It's going to, if it passes, then it's going to go up in front of the town council or the city council. All right. I mean, take a deep breath and think about this, please. I know you don't have to put up with it, but we do, and all the residents here have to put up with it. And we're pleading to you to consider that. We don't want 4 stories, 4 buildings in the land next to us. And I would hope you would please consider that. Thank you.
Still have about a minute and a half. Go ahead.
You know, all the time I've lived in.
Can you come up to the microphone, please?
In all the years I've lived in Greenwood, I've watched it grow and continually grow, and how it's grown has made sense. Everything that's been done fits. It's like a puzzle. And what's been done looks nice and it is enjoyable. But for me, trying to visualize what they want to do in this field, in this location, it's a piece that doesn't fit the puzzle. It doesn't fit the area. And that's what we're having trouble with. And again, that's why I reiterate, single family homes make sense. 1-story buildings, 2-story buildings, you know, doubles, the type that go all the way south. and come up to where we are. That makes sense. But a 4-story building just does not fit the aesthetics of the area and will change everything that's there. I understand there's progress. I understand people want to make money and there's a need for apartments, but there's land over to the east. There's land still to the north on the opposite side of the road to be developed. But it just doesn't fit this particular section of land. Like I said, what you've done so far makes sense. No matter where I go in Greenwood, it makes sense. But this piece to me just doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Then we've used the 5 minutes, so we'll close the public hearing. Commission, questions, comments? Mr. Dine.
Mr. Van Baerle, have you got any information from the FAA or anything saying that those 4-story buildings are not going to interfere with the airport? Because when they put the strip mall where Air Emporium is and the bicycle shop, they were afraid that those buildings were going to be too tall for being that close to the airport. Have you got anything that says that this is okay?
We do not have anything from the airport saying this will not work.
Okay, there will be one entrance in and one entrance out coming on Emerson Avenue.
That's, right now, it's the conceptual plan shows one entrance, but we've got to make provision for an emergency. Shows one in and one out. I'm sorry, so that we have to comply with emergency vehicle requirements.
Is your developer willing to put an 8 to 10 foot mound around the property or some sort of barrier to keep that separated from the neighborhoods and the other properties to make it a little bit more acceptable to the public?
We have talked about fencing and covered garage units along the property line to help buffer. We have not talked about mounting. I don't think there's enough room to get the mounting in and the required parking spaces.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. Are these aimed at families? Are they, well, they'll school children, school age children, families with kids, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, townhouses?
In the conceptual plan that we've shared with the planning department and in our petition materials, you can see in the site data, we're gonna have 1 bedroom units, total of 140 is what we're looking at right now. 2 bedroom, total of 192. You know, I mean, is that targeted at families? I can't really say. That kind of gets us into, whereas you can have 55 and older single family resident or communities, we have to be open to everyone. We're not an age restricted community. So
Nothing larger than a 2 bedroom though, right?
that's not in our plan right now. That's correct.
Thank you.
You mentioned a traffic study. Is there any timeline for that or?
Expect to have it next week.
I'm told that we expect to have it next week. Right now, engineering and surveying departments or companies are pretty hard to find. It's pretty hard to have find somebody that can finish it before the end of the year. And time constraints are short because you have purchase agreements with short due diligence timeframes. And you only have so much time to figure out whether the project's gonna work before the contract expires.
Would it be best to have a traffic study first? Okay.
And for all of you out there, so you know, this body just makes a recommendation, either favorable or unfavorable for the zoning. The common council will make the decision on whether to rezone the property and what the final commitments will be.
Any other comments on traffic study?
Other than there's
property that's still not developed, it's gonna get developed, so traffic's coming one way or another. I've seen it myself. Just a comment. But maybe the density, you know, is there a chance that the density could be reconsidered on that project?
It's, yeah, I mean, it's a conceptual plan. Right now, we're at 20 units per acre, whereas we could be at 30. So we are middle of the road, I suppose.
Out of curiosity, so if we, you know, if we follow his suggestion to wait for traffic study, how fast do those results come in? Like basically how far along does that push the calendar? I mean,
It probably gets us outside our due diligence period. And I understand from the staff report that if the traffic study, I mean, this would be approved with certain commitments based on the traffic study. For example, if the director of engineering determines that XL decel lanes are necessary based off the traffic study, we're gonna have to put in an XL decel lane.
I'm just kind of piggybacking off what he asked.
No, yeah, it's fair. Typically, that traffic report would be reviewed during the plan review process. A lot of times developers will order it early, as Tom has done. And that's when they want to know just I'll say, the full picture of what improvements may be required before they're kind of on the hook and own the property. So knowing that there are potentially some things they'll have to do to improve the roadway, they wanted to get that report first so they could talk to engineering a little more expeditiously. But typically we wouldn't see the traffic reports until later in the process.
Dale, this is maybe a question for fire, but don't they normally request multiple entrances?
For this size development, yes, they would need 2 entrances. I did see the plan that is up on the screen here as a secondary access to the south, which was not in what we sent you in your packets, I believe. So that would fulfill that secondary access. Again, that's not set in stone. That might be, I don't know the plans, that might be gated. I would suspect it would be, because fitting XL and decel lanes in there, as that puts the property line, would probably be pretty difficult. But that is something we'd have to vet out. But yes, the short answer is they will need two access points.
With the island there, is that something that would have to be amended to make that second, because
I'd have to check with fire, but I believe not, given the width of Emerson. But again, I have to check with fire. I don't know if they would be willing to take the U-turn on Emerson and come back down there.
So if they come from 91, they come from the south. If they came from 94,
they could go either way.
They come from the north.
But again, the blockage is, or the secondary means of access is if the main access is blocked. So that's the main reason that they have this. And we'll need to, as I understand it, we'll need to figure out where that needs to go before we get a site plan that's approved. Yeah, fire is one of the department, the fire department, engineering, planning, and stormwater all have approval on the final plan. So if any of those departments are not happy with the final solution, then the permits do not get released. You'll notice in your staff report, staff has recommended a rather lengthy list of amendments on this property. I know there's been mention of the FAA here as well. That is certainly something we require. We want a copy of the FAA approval. Petitioner has estimated where that building line would be that would give them 45 feet. I know it's possible because Garrett Company is doing that to the north of this site. I would like the FAA themselves to verify where that line is for us. So we know that all is well and good, but I know it's possible. We're going to have ongoing discussions about drainage and water storage and appropriate landscape. There is when this hits a primary plat, we'll probably have to talk a little bit more about landscape, much like we have to do with the Garrett project, because.
Buffer landscape.
Because we don't want to encourage animals next to the runways. So there are a lot more considerations that will be taken up throughout the process. Those will come before you, but you kind of have a framework way out here, and the commitment staff has put forward.
So far as Mr. Peony's concerned, is that something that would be taken up at a later point then?
Yes, typically is.
Mr. Shell, I got a question.
Please, Mr. Polar, proceed.
Is there a stoplight plan for this, or is that going to be a result of the traffic study?
I mean, if it meets a signal warrant, that's a hard question to answer. Paul, do you have any thoughts on that? Without the study, I can't really say that.
Right. That satisfy you, Mr. Polar?
Well, I'm just thinking if you got, one of the remonstrators was stating a minimum of 320 cars or 342, I'm thinking that that's probably at the end of the day going to warrant a stoplight.
Not necessarily, but again, I would need traffic minds greater than mine to analyze that.
Understand? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Dye.
Mr. Van Valer, there's a lot of open-ended questions here and a lot of not having answers. Rather than you keep getting kicked in the teeth, would you like to come back in 2 weeks and answer some of the questions that we've had tonight, or have your documentation? Or is that just gonna, I'm afraid if we go forward, your project may get an unfavorable vote.
Can I ask my client?
You guys make the decision and we'll live with your decision, we'll go forward, but yeah, I don't wanna. I mean, this is where we're headed, it looks like it's.
Mr. Dine, if they choose to continue this or have additional information such as a traffic study, we would have to reopen the hearing, the public hearing. At that time.
I understand, but
Just, yeah, okay, it's just so everybody understands, including the audience.
Is the unanswered question the traffic study?
the airport, I mean, as far as the FAA, the traffic study, the fire department issues, and some other things that the city had put in their review.
We're happy to continue it. It's probably, we're gonna have to work on getting an extension on the purchase agreement, which isn't a guarantee. We're probably gonna have the traffic study. I can't tell you when the FAA is gonna give us anything. The FAA process is gonna be months. I mean, that typically runs the length of our plan review process, which takes 60 to 90 days.
Well, that would be a contingency, wouldn't it? Contingent upon the FAA.
Yes, all these commitments that staff is right now basically say the developer's going to do these things. The FAA approval is gonna take us a while, for sure. And they're going to need something more than they have here to even submit for that. I don't know that you have more details than this to provide. Right, Mr. Davis, who's gonna approve the site plan that we present at the appropriate time? Well, that's the thing, we're not in plan review right now, so it's kind of hard to approve them without the full engineering. But who would that entity be? We gotta come back to the plan commission? Are you saying for the plan set, or the eventual plat, or the plan? The primary plat comes here. Okay, so this project will be before this board again. So in terms of process, just back it up so everyone understands. The rezone is the first step. So you rezone the property. Okay, that gives our petitioner reason to conduct more due diligence. They will then hire an engineering firm who will conduct a primary plat. That's a notice hearing at this point. That sets out the land use, sets out the density. At that point, the developer will take a much more detailed look at what really fits on this ground. They're gonna dive into the drainage report. They're gonna know how much land they need to dedicate to water. Right now, they've got an idea, but we'll see, is that enough area? They'll work out parking spaces, they'll work out the buffers. So that'll all be much more sorted out when this comes back as a primary plat. But the primary plat's still not a final picture either. That's just, let's say, the 60 or 70% drawings. Then it goes into plan review. Then we actually dive into what's going to be built. That's when we get down to, the inches and the feet. Following that, you get your land alteration permit released, they can start moving and they can turn in for building permits. So this is a earlier step in the process. So some of the things we are looking for are things that are going to be required of them to sort out. But to have them sorted out for the next meeting in 2 weeks, we'll have the traffic study, so that will help. But especially items like FAA,
That's months.
yeah, and honestly, many months, because we'd have to have the site plan to do that.
Right.
So that would take a lot of work and engineering to get there. So at this point, what's before the board is this an appropriate use? We have a nice picture to go with it. It really talks to what they want to do. But we have a lot of engineering to do before we say they can really do this.
And in reality, rezoning from industrial large to residential multi-unit complex does not speak to 1-story, 2-story, 3-story, 4-story, right?
Correct. There's the maximum heights on the buildings.
Right.
So residential mixed use, that more or less limits people to 4 stories. The industrial large has a maximum height of 80 feet. Within 300 feet of residential, it's 60 feet. So given the size of the site, they'd probably be limited more to 60 feet, which is still more than the 45 that's proposed. And for sake of comparison with industrial large, there's a new industrial building built just on the other side of 65 on Main Street that Lowe's is operating out of. That's 150,000 square foot building on about 11 acres. We're talking about 16, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes. 16 acres.
So you could fit another 50,000 square feet on that and the parking to manage it and fit a building of that size on this property. So.
This is primarily, not primarily, this is a question of whether we will recommend rezoning from industrial large to residential multi-unit complex. Any other questions or comments?
I'm torn on this because I don't think industrial is good, but I don't have enough answers to really make me comfortable with the decision. As long as we're just dealing with the zoning, I can probably live with that. But as far as the project going forward, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. And Mr. Mayweather, I'm sure after you just went through what you did, you will have all of our answers.
But yeah, I'm not trying to be evasive. Some of it's just the economics. Like we can't justify hiring a project engineer like Projects Plus to come in and engineer the site for us, because it costs a lot of money.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah, I'm trying to be as transparent as I can.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderlip. And Mr. Dine, you've heard me in previous meetings, I have a little bit of a passion for having either commercial or industrial stepping to multifamily before you get into single family. So that aspect of this, in my mind, fits the situation. And I just think we're too early in the process to realize what. the
To be
multi-
as critical as we are,
To realize what the multi-unit would look like.
so we stay focused on the rezoning.
I believe so.
Makes sense.
Motion has been prepared.
I move that the petition for the zone map change to rezone approximately 16 acres of land located at 374 North Emerson Avenue within the city of Greenwood, Johnson County, Indiana, from IL Industrial Large Format Zone use to RMC Residential Multi-Unit Complex Zone use, as set forth therein, receive a favorable recommendation from this commission to the Greenwood Common Council, and that the same be certified to the Greenwood Common Council in the form presented with these commitments.
Did you, when you say the commitments as proposed in the staff report?
Yes. A motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Monica. Do a roll call vote. Mr. Dine. Aye. Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Mr. Schrader. Aye. Ms. Gardner.
Nay.
Mr. King.
Nay.
Monica.
Aye.
Mr. Pioni. Mr. Polar.
Aye.
I'll too will vote aye. I'd like to remind the audience that there will be a public hearing for the primary plat
Later, yes.
at some
Primary
future
plat is
date.
a public hearing.
And the rezone itself is an action of council, which will
Yes.
be heard at their next meeting.
Which is a week from today.
No, that's a fifth Monday, so it's-
Oh,
it's not until Monday,
Two
December
weeks.
6th.
2 weeks from today.
Yes, December 6th.
Is there any new business from the floor? Are there any announcements?
We do have business at our next meeting, so I will see you on December 13th. Now, it being Christmas, our Christmas week, when we would have our second meeting, that second meeting of December is canceled.
Yeah.
So we only have one meeting in December.
Okay. And I too have an announcement. I want to thank Ms. Coombs for coming in on a week that she has off. There's a great deal of dedication there, and I appreciate it. Very much. Yeah. So therefore Shawnee has another job.
I move we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.